Back to work on the REO today. I gave the exhaust valve a little bit of a grind on my bench grinder, just tried to clean it up. It had a few little minor pits in it, and I think we'll lap that in, and then we'll do the intake. The intake, I don't think I'll have to. I might run it on my bench grinder a little bit just to clean it up and get them to seal a little better. But anyway, I'm going to get some stuff and lap this one in. The first, I'm just going to dab a little coarse on here. Doesn't take a lot. And then I'm going to makes it easy having a slot in the valve. Alright, let me get something, we'll wipe that off and take a look at it. You see a little gray line around there? I think I'll give it a little bit more lapping. Hang on a second, I want to just really look at it in the light. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that is a pretty good gray line around on the valve. And now I'm going to run the fine compound on it, so let me get that opened up. Doesn't take much of the stuff. This stuff lasts forever. It's just that my other stuff I had went hard. I probably had it for 40 years too. That looks amazing. I don't know how well that shows up in the video, but on the face of the valve it looks amazing. I'll do the intake and then we'll set the valve lash. Yeah, that looks really, really good. Totally happy with that. I hope that shows up in the video that where it's lapped in. Alright, let me do the intake now. See how maybe it will focus. See how there's a little groove in there? Got to get that out so the valve face is all smooth so it will lap in and seat good. So this valve's slightly a little hammered. There we go, gave that a finish, nice clean up grinding. So let me get this one lapped in now. It didn't show how I do this, but I chuck this up in my Makita and run the Makita on high and turn the belt sander on and hold this kind of on the correct angle to the belt or to the disc with the drill going, just barely touching the disc, and it cleans them up pretty quick. But anyway, let me get some lapping coarse compound on it. Hopefully this valve seats in. Yeah, and then I can run a little sandpaper, see, and I cleaned up the stem there a little bit too. And I'll probably have to grind the stem to The lash will probably be a little tight from taking material off the valve. Oh yeah, that looks nice. We'll do a fine compound and then the valve job will be done. My backyard shade tree valve job. This is fine. I wouldn't do this to an automobile engine, no way. But for a lawnmower engine, I've done it this way on lawnmower engines my whole life. And I've never had a valve failure from doing it this way ever. Done with the course. That's probably enough of a fine. Probably more than enough. Oh yeah. Nice, nice, nice. I assume that you can see that, the line on that valve. I can't tell on that little itty bitty 2-inch screen on my GoPro what I'm looking at when it comes to little things. Alright, let me set the valve lash, and then I'll get everything all cleaned up really good, and we'll put the valve springs and stuff back in. I put the camshaft in, and I put a little oil on the bearing and got just so I can set the lash. Now I can clearly see the lobes down there, and it says the intake. Do you see that? There's the specs. Intake's 8 to 12 thousandths, exhaust is 10 to 14 cold. So I'm going to set the intake at 10. Does that show up? Hopefully. And then I'm going to set the exhaust at 12. So let's see what the intake is at right now. That's just, I think it's a little tight. It's pushing the valve open because, you know, I ground the valve. Yeah, they're both tight. So we're going to take a little bit off this end right here, and I'm just going to do it on the belt sander awfully quick, because I only need to take like 1/1000ths off. In fact, I might just use my bench grinder. It might be easier as I can just gently touch it. The belt sander tends to take way more off quicker. I was several times back and forth to the grinder, and I was very careful because I didn't want to go too much, but I hold the cam straight in, hold the valve closed, and I can just get that. It's a tight 10/1000ths on the intake, so, but I can get the gauge in, so we'll call that good. The exhaust valve I really had to go to town on, and that's a very tight 12. The 10 goes through it, and it's 10 to 14, so I don't want to take too much off, so I'm going to call that good. And I'm, like I say, I'm holding the cam in so it's square as I can get it to the followers. It's a little tight at 12. Now I'm going to put just a little oil on the valve guides so they're not running on a dry guide. I think I'll even drip a little down in the guides. I can push the valve in, and that way we make sure that the guides aren't running dry. So it'll probably smoke a little bit when I first run it, but at least it'll have lubrication, right? Doesn't hurt to get a little oil here either. Alright, let me go get the little keeper things out of the parts washer. My springs are right here all clean, but the little keepers are still in the parts washer. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but I'm going to just push the valve spring down and then put this pin through the little hole in the... Might have to push this up first with both my fingers, and I'll hold it with one. There we go. Then drop the pin in if I can get it before my fingers get too sore. Oops, I dropped the pin. And my finger was getting sore from holding the spring, so let me get the spring back up. My fat finger was in the way. Maybe I need to turn the valve a little bit. Well, let me, I don't think you're seeing anyway, but you can see what I'm doing, just that my thumb is so fat that I can't get it in. Let me see if I can turn the valve a little bit. Maybe that'll help. There we go. There's one valve. That's where the little follower works. And let me get the other one. Make sure, you know, you put these, if you put these the wrong way around like that and like that, put your engine together, see if you put them in like this, the valves won't even work. So make sure you put your little followers where they belong so the valves work. But I'd say everything's all good now. I'm going to change the oil seals. I'm just trying. Oh, wow, yeah, that was loose. And so there's the old seal. Has a bunch of numbers on that side. And I'm going to put a little tiny bit of Loctite on the metal side of the seal. This side of the seal, I'm just going to put a little red Loctite around it just to ensure that it seals up good in there and doesn't come loose out of the hole that it goes into there. I don't know if I'm getting this on video or not. I can't see the little screen. I hope I am. New seal is installed in that. These are the, in case if you're looking for seals for your REO engine. This seal that was on the camshaft, it says fluid side 1-, can't tell what it says there, and then it, national or NAT, and then it's 2404. I can't tell what it is. Maybe you can. It's kind of messed up, but anyway, that's the seal that I took out of the cam. They're both the same. And this is the one I took out of the crank, which they both just popped out real easy with the screwdriver, so I think these have both been replaced, but this is 20779 on that number. But these seals here fit really nicely. So again, if you're looking for a seal for your REO, that one works pretty good. Pretty happy with the fit. So I got the gasket in place. We'll put a little oil on the bearings and on the crank and get that installed here in a minute. I got to get some tools. Before this goes on, I need to put these shields on and all this stuff. And these shields are obviously which ones. See how that one fits nicely there. Get my remote out of my hand, and this one doesn't fit at all there. So you know which shield goes where. So I'm going to get the shields on here, and then we can get this attached to the engine. These screws I think are 6 to 7 foot-pounds. So this is going to be my torque wrench. I've already gone around and snugged them up once pretty good. I think they're going to probably be torqued tighter than what they need to be. That's not going to go anywhere, that's for sure. I don't want to break the screws either, you know, they're only 1/4 20s. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Crank turns nicely. I oiled the seal, the shaft, and the bushing all before I put it together. Obviously I had to put these cooling shields on in order to get it. I put this on and the intake, as you saw. So now I got to put the gear, the crank timing gear on, and then check the crankshaft end play because it's set where that gear rubs on here, and I don't have any shims, so if it's wrong, it's wrong. This is just bolted on finger tight. These bolts here, they're just, you can see, no gasket. I just needed it to set on something with this cooling thing, you know, with this thing on here. But let me get that gears in the parts washer. I threw it in there to clean it up. Let me wash it. We'll get that on and get this cover on. I put oil on the crankshaft, put the key in. I put a little oil in this. This has a timing mark right there on the outboard side. That key, there we go. Put the bolt and the washer in. Maybe get a little oil on the threads just so it doesn't gall up because everything's been so thoroughly cleaned. And then I'll torque this bolt down. The spec for the crankshaft end play is 4 to 12 thousandths. I got a 6 thousandths gauge here, and it just fits in there like really snugly. Like I got to work to get it in, so it's within 5-6 thousandths. So the crank end play, you can see I'm moving the crank back and forth, is and I push it all the way out. Like I say, I can barely get the 6 in there, so it's totally within specs. I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's the mark on the cam, there's the mark on the crank, so the timing is totally set correctly. Did a complete revolution, so it's the timings completed the cam, which is to the crank, and that's right on, spot on the money. So let me put the timing cover on. Timing cover's on, it's torqued down. It was 6 to 7 foot-pounds too. The valves work, everything seems to work. I oiled all the bearings and shafts. Once I get the motor running, I'll just take some fine sandpaper and clean that shaft up, the output shaft on the end. I just ran these screws in. They hold that plate on for the belt thing just so they don't fall out. I put the breaker plate in. I cleaned the points, and I'm going to put some of this, got some of this old cam lube stuff. If you don't lubricate that rubbing block on the cam, you'll end up with your points all messed up wrong. So, you know, that wears, and then you always put it on the side so this crank goes this way. So I'm going to put it on this side of the points, and you don't need to be too heavy duty with the stuff. Put a little on this little felt thing here, that wiper, and I might even just smear just a film on this, seeing it's been all apart, cleaned in the parts washer and stuff. I just don't want that little thing to, don't want oil in the points. If you get too much stuff here, you get oil in your points. But see, I'm just almost to where you don't even see it. And then there's an arrow and numbers that go out. There we go. I opened up the points to shove that on there, and now we'll gap the points. I got a 20 thousandths feeler gauge here. Ooh, and that is just like, you actually couldn't ask after I cleaned the points really good with some 400 grit. You couldn't ask for a better gap than that, so I'll leave the points alone. There we go, the points are in and gapped, and I'm going to paint the other cylinder head. Just gave it a quickie in the blast cabinet, but what I did, before I put the ignition in, I cleaned up that brass end on the spark plug boot there, and I don't know if you can see this or not here. I polished that too, so it would, you know, I just think that looks a little nicer. But that head's just sitting there, obviously. You can see the bolts aren't even threaded in one or two turns, but just kind of wanted to show. And the same with, there I polished the screws. That tag's in pretty rough shape, but it's the tag, so that's just the way it is. Finally stopped snowing out, so I can put some little bit of primer on this. Good enough. There we go. All right, maybe tomorrow we'll get that painted up. Well, I thought I'd just share some of the specs on this engine. So it's 1 3/4 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. That's the governed RPM, so it's a little screamer. And it's 5.6 cubic inches. It has a 5.3 to 1 compression ratio. It says it should have 60 to 65 pounds of compression at 1,000 RPM. We'll do a compression test maybe when I'm done. I'm checking the ring gap on all the piston rings, and this is a 2,000ths and it's loose in there, but a 3,000ths fits it just right. So that's showing about, the cylinder was worn about 1,000ths when I measured it from what it should be, but it's still within tolerance. That's one of the original rings, and yeah, that gap is probably 20 thousandths or more anyway. Yeah, that's 25. So I'm going to put the new rings on the piston. That gap is pretty excessive. Yeah, all the original rings are definitely worn, so I'm definitely putting the new rings on the piston. And I was just cleaning the groove out, making sure there was no carbon or anything. A little bit of the darkness in there isn't going to hurt anything. I just don't want any chunkies in there, but the staining, that isn't going to hurt anything. So I'm just going around and I'll scrape the chunkies out, and then I'll wash it in the parts washer, and we'll put the new rings on it. So let me just, it takes a little bit of time, but that cleans, like I say, this is the broken ring. This is what would be the normal end of the ring. That's the end that was broken. So I just kind of use it as a ring groove scraper, seeing I don't have one for these small ring grooves. They're just tiny little rings. Anyway, let me clean that up and we'll get the new rings on it. The new rings are on the piston, and the spec for the end clearance is 0.0005 to 0.002, and I got a 0.015. The 0.002 doesn't fit, but this one just fits if I wiggle it just right. Here, let me see if I can. It's hard to get it in there. It does go in, take there, it's in now. And let me see if I can get it in the oil control ring. There. Just, it's a little bit of a snug fit, but it definitely goes, so we'll call that good. The piston is ready to oil up and put in. Oiled up the piston. I set the rings, the oil ring grooves over here, the compression rings. They say to place them about 120 degrees apart. So that's about where they are, and it said to put the oil control ring there. And I guess the crank is good where it's at. And I'll get a ring compressor to throw on it. I don't know if my ring compressor will go that small, but we'll certainly try it. I just want to kind of make sure all the rings are right where I want them. They are. All right, let me dig out my ring compressor. Yeah, it just doesn't want to go any smaller, so I guess I'll just have to use a couple screwdrivers to push the rings closed. Or my fingers. I'll try my fingers first, although it's hard on my fingertips to do that, but save damaging the ring. But yeah, this definitely isn't gonna. I don't have a ring compressor small enough for a 2-inch piston. I just realized I forgot to start the camera. I was just pushing the rings in with my fingers and trying to get the thing down in. And this ring's proven to be the most difficult. That's what they say though, isn't it? The last ring is always, last spark plug's always the hardest one to come out. There we go. The connecting rod is supposed to be torqued to 10 foot-pounds, so I'm going to put it 120 inch-pounds because I think it'd just be easier to use my inch-pound torque wrench here than. And I'm going to go a little at a time on them. Whoops. Socket slipped off. That's not very good, is it? Okay, that's 120 inch-pounds on both rod bolts. Let me bend those things up. Well, these are bent over. I took my oil squirt can and gave everything in the rod and the wrist pin and piston, and give everything, all the bearings. Try and get in everywhere, give everything a few drops of oil, and I rotated it a couple of times. I'm going to try and check the timing to see how accurate it is. I set the timing here basically where it was, but I made this off the internet, and this obviously is opposite. With this engine, the crank runs this way, and this is for one that anyway. What we're going to do is I'm going to make like a little pointer for the crank, and that's tap dead center, and I can turn the crank and I'll put an ohm meter on it, but there's the points are just touching, so that would be spark, and you can see the piston is not quite top dead center there. So I don't know if that's 12.5 degrees or not, but we'll get it back up the top, and I can wiggle a crank back and forth and see the piston doing this. I know exactly that's top dead center. You're going to see my crude way of doing this. There's a little like ball bearing there, which is, I don't know if that's for oiling or what, but anyway, I got my wrench sitting on there, and I'm going to hold this center right on that ball bearing, and I'm going to put that 0 right at the, and hopefully I can move this without the degree thing changing, and we'll see how, I'm going to look at the points while I move this and see as soon as they're closed. Wow, yeah, so that's way more than the, how many degrees did it say? I gotta find this again. 22.5, well maybe that is right. Let's see, that would be 10, 20, yeah, actually that's just shy of 22.5. Again, this is, yeah, see, that time I come up with 23 degrees. So I think we'll call that timing good. I think I'll put the flywheel on, and we won't change that. That's set exactly where it was set when I took the motor apart. I put a little oil on the shaft, and this little floppy washer is lined up with the key on that. And everything looks good, so we'll throw the flywheel on. There's a little bit of movement in that too, so I guess the timing doesn't need to be exactly spot on. Let's see, that's exhaust, intake, compression, TDC. I'll touch anything up that I mess up, scratch up when I'm putting it together, like a couple wrench scratches on this, which is, you know, easily touch upable. Got to tighten these ones up good. And I think that's good enough. Oops, I want to keep that. It's not good to rotate these old magnetos without your plug wire grounded, so I just ground it to the cylinder block right here. But there we go. That's, I got to paint the head. It looked like it was going to rain earlier. It looks like it's not going to now, so maybe I'll paint the head and then rebuild the carburetor. And we'll be ready to start putting together. I might put the blower housing on and then show you, just hold the gas tank up to it. It really looks good. Let me put the blower housing on. There we go with the blower housing installed nicely. Turns over nicely. The head is just sitting there. It's not bolted on. It's the one with the broken fin. I'm hoping to paint the this one that doesn't have the broken fin yet today. Just waiting on the weather. And if not, I'll paint it tomorrow. Oops, stepping on the air hose blowgun. But you can see this thing looks pretty darn good. Let me give you a lower view here. Yeah, I'm happy with the way it looks. Might put oil in it. so it doesn't sit here without oil. But yeah, so all I got left to do is paint the head and rebuild the carburetor. So I think I'll paint the head today, maybe next day or two I'll rebuild the carburetor. Let me get you the gas tank, and just that thing, the gas tank, all the paint turned out really nice. I mean, I couldn't be happier with the way the paint came out. Let me get the gas tank and hold it up too. Yeah, the gas tank came out perfect. And that will be attached over there, like, let's see, like so. And for the, I'll show you what I'm going to do for the grommet for in here. This is what Doug, the guy I got the REO engine parts from, said a lot of the guys cut the valve stem off here and then shove this into here, and then when you can push that fill petcock thing into there, and he said they seal up pretty good. So that is what I will do for gas tank seal. It sounded like a great idea. You said that they're obsolete. You can see the little drip I got right there. That dripped off this. This was hanging there, and I wanted to get paint in behind all these, and I got it a little heavy, and it kind of, but you won't see that because it'll be kind of hidden by the head a little bit. That'll be closer in because it'll be under the bolt, but yeah, I think it'll look fine once it's on. Really happy with the way it's moving along here. So I just want to yap here a few minutes about these motors and what my plans are with it. And first off, this is a magneto ignition. On magneto ignitions, when the points close, you get spark. On coil ignition, when the points open, you get spark. But anyway, now what my plans was to buy a kid's tricycle and mount this motor to it and make a powered tricycle. I might have to make one, just make one out of scratch, and you know, I could get a regular bicycle to cut the front off for the forks and, you know, all the steering stuff and whatnot, and find some wheels. May even have to make wheels. But anyway, I think this REO engine would be neat on something like that. And the way I would power it, the problem is it has a 5/8 by 1 inch crank, so there's no putting a regular clutch on here. Plus the RPM of this would be too low, so I'm thinking of just putting a V-belt pulley on the crank that would drive, maybe have it come down and drive a pulley on a shaft with a centrifugal clutch that would have a chain going to the drive wheel. And that's kind of my thoughts. And but anyway, I gotta come up with some, you know, drawings or something of how I want to do it. I want it to look retro, you know, kind of old schoolish, and you know, it's such a neat looking engine. And you know, I saved this. Let me get it out of the box here. I saved this component here, and I could bolt it on. This is the way I bolted on the lawnmower, but I could bolt it on here, you know, and get a cover. And so, you know, and paint the cover green like on the lawnmower. But my thought was I'd paint the frame. If you look at the old REO lawnmowers, they're this green, like a creamy color, and a red. The green was on the engine and the belt cover and stuff like that, the blades, the real blades, and the knife and all that stuff on the underside of the mower, but the cream was on the part the engine bolted to, the deck, so to speak, and the handlebars. So I was thinking of painting the frame in the green or the cream that REO's used, and then the engine or the name, I'm thinking, you know, if you look at it, looks like, you know, they kind of brush painted REO. It's on their wheels, a lot of their mowers, and they're in red. And they look kind of neat, so I was thinking on the frame, if I made a, you know, if the bar was here and I made an apparatus or something, I could put red REO letters on the cream frame with the green. And then, you know, they always name they had a runabout mower. They had a trollabout for trolling inboard motors using one of these. So I'd call it a Trikeabout. Why not make the name and put it on the, you know, on the back plate, Trikeabout. I mean, everything was a something about with a lot of the REOs. So that's kind of my thoughts of, you know, what I'm going to do with this REO engine. I just think that'd make kind of a neat looking little rig. And these engines govern at 4,000 RPM. I don't think I'll govern it that high. I might govern it at 3,500. It's an old engine. I don't want to run the snot out of it. I still got the head gasket and carburetor gaskets. I'm going to rebuild the carburetor, straighten up the muffler and get that done. And then pretty much all should be ready to go. I'm going to try and find an old school. I got to go through all my spark plugs, find with the old brass nut. I think this had originally a J11 in it. So I might see, who knows, I might have one. I got a milk crate. Actually, I got 2 milk crates full of spark plugs, new in the box spark plugs. So I'll dig through some of them and see what and when I say new in the box, some of them are, you know, 50, 75-year-old spark plugs that are brand new in the box. So they're all from estate sales. So anyway, I'll go through and see if I can find the correct vintage spark plug for this. I'm going to leave this bracket on it now. I can always change it. Like I said, that's just sitting there. So I'm going to paint the head yet today, maybe after this segment right here. And then I got to put some light fixtures up and do a few things around the house. And then I'll work on rebuilding the carburetor. I'll probably get this running after my surgery. So I'm just going to, you know, because the paint on the head is going to half dry a couple of days also. And I can work on the carburetor while that's drying. But like I say, I got to do a few things around the house here too. So anyway, I'm going to get the head painted up. That'll be in this video. And we'll probably do a separate video on getting it running. Coat number 1. This is ready for a final coat. You can see I don't know if you can hear that, but it feels like masking tape and it doesn't stick to my fingers. So we're ready to throw another and a final coat this will be. Whoops, the wind changed directions on me. Let me move the camera so I don't get overspray on it. Sorry. Alright, I think we'll call that a final coat on the cylinder head. That looks pretty darn good. There we are, 2 nice coats of paint on the cylinder head. It came out really, really nice. Let that dry a couple days and we'll put it on and torque it down. I'm going to end this video here. This is basically assembling the engine, so I'm going to label it assembling the engine, part 5 I guess, and then the next part will be rebuilding the carburetor. I'll do a video on rebuilding the carburetor and getting it running. That will be video number 6 and probably the final video on this engine restoration. And then when I find a tricycle or a trike or something, start building one, obviously I'll do videos on that. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you liked the video, definitely hit the like button. It certainly helps. If you like my channel, you can hit that 348 engine icon there. That will subscribe you. And thank you for watching my video.